Managed aquifer recharge is a way of managing water so that you can take it and get it back in the groundwater so that it can be used for all sorts of purposes at a different time when it's needed. One of the challenges in global water supplies, and here in Nebraska as well, is that groundwater is one of our best sources, but it's also a limited source of water. And so they're trying to find ways to enhance the storage in our groundwater. That's the least expensive way and most reliable way to store water is in the ground. And so managed aquifer recharge is a way to use that naturally occurring storage. The UNESCO book was a really great collection of projects worldwide that showed how groundwater recharge can be done in a whole variety of ways. And they wanted these to be really practical case studies so that anybody in the world can see all these different examples and hopefully find a project that could be useful in their region and then be able to contact those authors and maybe put it into practice. I think that this collection of stories will be useful for water managers all over the world, particularly those who are managing groundwater, to find some practical ways that they can help contribute back to their groundwater storage. Our project took place in the Central Platte River Valley in Nebraska, and so it was in the Central Platte Natural Resource District. So they're our local water management district who is in charge of groundwater in their region. And so this was a project where they worked with some of the surface water irrigation that has been in place in that district for over 100 years to use those canals as a formal way to store water in the off-season so that it'll percolate down through the soil and recharge the aquifer. So there's a program for the Platte River called the Platte River Recovery Implementation Program, where they're trying to make sure there's enough water for endangered species in the Platte. So these are things like the whooping crane and the least tern, which are two different birds, which are federally endangered. And so as part of that program, they're trying to make sure that there's plenty of water in the river. Part of the way they do that is through managed aquifer recharge by taking extra water, what they call extra water, in the winter, putting it back in the ground, and that slows it down so that it slowly comes back into the river all year round, making sure that there's always water there when the birds need it. Another benefit of this particular project is that by storing that water in the groundwater around the river, that provides water also for the irrigators of the Central Platte. So it benefits both the wildlife and the agriculture of the whole valley. One of the economic advantages of this project is that the infrastructure was already in place. The canals were already existing, and the water, like I said, you can argue if there's truly excess flows, but in the way this is managed, we've got a lot of entities working together, and there is still extra water in the Platte in the winter time when there's high flows. And so it all works through gravity, so there's not an energy component. And so the idea is that this is getting the most beneficial use out of that water and then bringing it back in timing so that it has the broadest benefit across the whole valley. This was really initiated at the local level, which is what's really cool about how Nebraska manages water. The Natural Resource District in that area knew that they wanted to work with these irrigation districts because the irrigation districts needed to clean up their canal. They're 100 years old, so they need maintenance. And so they knew they needed to do that. The NRD knew they were interested in this groundwater piece, and then they worked really closely with the Nebraska Department of Natural Resources, who helps do integrated water management planning. So those three groups came up with this really local plan to figure out how to make sure this water ends up in the river when they need it. There was a lot of planning involved, and there's modeling involved to make sure that it has the benefits that they expect. But I think this particular project is a great example of using existing infrastructure for additional benefits. Another great advantage of this particular example in Nebraska is that it's a place where both the people, the wildlife, and the water system are all benefiting together, and using a really low cost, low energy method to provide those benefits.